Hi, my name is Judy Kessinger. I'm the creator and the owner of the Filleting system. I designed this system to make your sewing easy. So I'm going to show you today one of the easiest things in the world to do. This is called a serger blouse. The entire thing is created on your serger. Now the first thing that you need to make sure that you have besides your master pattern, because remember all these variations start with your master pattern. So that's the first thing you need to make sure you have. The second thing is print out the directions for the serger blouse. And if you look at this very carefully, it says serger blouse / jacket, because you can wear the blouses as a jacket. There are even directions on here on how to make a reversible jacket. So that's even more fun. Now the reason I call it the serger blouse is not only is it sewn on the serger, but it's also finished on the serger. So there's no hem. There's no hem to the sleeves, there's no hem to the bottom. So this is why it's fast and easy to do. So let me show you some of the things that you need to collect. Again, you need to print off your directions so that you can follow along on the video. You need a tape measure. I don't know how anybody sews without a tape measure. You have to choose patternees to make your pattern, because we're going to make a whole new pattern for this. I have suggested on every one of these videos, when you do any of the variations, make a new pattern. Now, I love those file folders that have slots in them, and that's where I keep all of my patterns, but that choice is totally up to you. Then I suggest that you purchase some French fuse. There is a video on how to put on French fuse. I sell it along with the patternees on my website, and it comes in 3 different colors, so beige, white, and black. You choose whichever one is best for you. You need Scotch tape, because we're going to actually tape this pattern together. We're going to tape the seam allowances. You need pins. Make sure that you have your pins ready. I suggest you purchase a glue stick. You can do that on my website as well, because we're going to glue the buttons on to hold them in place while we sew them on. You need a marker, whatever color you want to use, and of course you need a good pair of scissors, and Kai scissors are my favorite. If you've never used them, go back and check out the video, because there's a whole video just on the scissors. And then you need decorative thread. Now my favorite decorative thread is called Filleting, F-I-L-A-I-N-E. And I've noticed lately, I always spell it, and I think it's because that southern twang, it's hard to understand what I'm saying. But that's the name of the thread, Filleting thread. Filleting thread is 100% acrylic. And I own a baby lock serger, and my serger blows the thread through, and guess what? This blows through. You don't need any guide to get the thread through at all. You could choose embroidery thread if you want to, like use 2 threads in the upper looper and 2 threads in the lower looper, or any other kind of decorative thread that you like. I like this, and I think you'll see why when I start to sew, because it literally fills in the stitches. So I love this thread. You also are going to need fabric. Now let's talk just a little bit about fabric. This garment is not for knits. This is not something you want to buy the Sophia knit for. This is for your woven fabric. So all you quilters out there, go look in your stash. I bet you have a lot of that kind of woven fabric, and they make great blouses, by the way. I chose this particular fabric. This is what I'm going to work with today, because it screams summer, don't you think? This has absolutely no give whatsoever, none. This fabric would make an absolutely beautiful serger blouse, and one of the reasons is because it has 3% lycra in it, so it's going to give a little. I have encouraged you all along to purchase any kind of fabric that has lycra in it, like your denim, your cotton, your linen, your wools. They all have just a little bit of lycra. The lycra in there just gives you a little bit more comfort room. That's all it does. I particularly love it because you've got a little bit more comfort room, but the fabric choice is up to you. The yardages are right here on your printout. You need 1.5 to 2 yards, depending on whether you're going to do short sleeves or long sleeves, or you're going to make this thing long or short. So again, you get to be the designer. Now let's get started and make the pattern. Once you've printed out the directions for the serger blouse, and again, notice that it says jacket, because you can make a jacket out of this, you want to follow the directions for making your pattern. But I'm going to show you how that's done, and it's very simple to do. If you are full busted, make sure that you add the 2 inches to the center front. You'll see that in just a second when I draw it. You need enough to cure gaposis. And we all know what that is. All of us that are full busted know what that is, because it's something that pulls across your bust line. We want to make sure we have enough for our buttons and buttonholes. Even if you're going to wear it as a jacket, you still need enough to do that. So let's draw that on your pattern. We can always cut it off, because remember I told you this is all finished on the serger. So we're not really making a seam and turning it to the inside. We're going to finish it with the serger. So take your directions, read through them before you start, and then we're going to draw this pattern. Now you remember that everything that we have done on every one of the variations starts with the master pattern. The master pattern is fine as is for the back of this, but we need to draw a new front. So make sure that you have this, your little flap. You want to put it down when you redraw the new front. On one of the other videos, I showed you how to make a princess line, and the princess line actually crosses your bust line. You can use that pattern if you want to do this variation. That's totally up to you, but I'm going to draw a new one, because what I'm going to do is something a little bit different. Now, remember, we don't cut this up, so we're going to redraw this one again and use a new pattern. But you're used to working on this side, where the top and the front and the back and the sleeves are, but I want you to turn it over to the other side, because on the other side you see the dome and overlay, you see the two cutting lines, the neck lines, and then you see the facing. So the facing is what we're working with today, and you can use the facing as a guide, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So the first thing that I did was I took my master pattern, my master top pattern, and I took a length of my patternese, and this is what I have right here, and I have already traced off my pattern. Okay, so we can move this out of the way. So I've traced off my master pattern, and this is what I have right here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add that 2 inches to this. So let me do that real quick, and I'll show you how that works. This is my center front, and all I'm going to do is add the 2 inches. So like this and like this. Now again, you may want to write on here that this is your serger blouse. That's totally up to you. And then I'm just going to add straight down like this and draw a line. Now that's the 2 inches that I've added to the center front, and again, as I told you, that's for buttons and buttonholes. Okay? Just like that. Very easy. I'm going to write on here serger blouse. And I'm going to write on here serger blouse, because we're going to cut this apart in a second. And then I'm going to write on here center front, because you may use this for something different later. So now you have all of that marked. Okay? So let's watch how simple this is. I'm going to take this and turn it over the other way, like this. I'm going to line up the center front, because you can see the center front on that facing. Can you see that? Okay. Line that up like that. And then all I have to do is to follow this line just like that. Now, if you don't draw very well, get yourself a pencil and draw it with pencil, and then you can always go over it with marker. So this is what my pattern, let me move this one out of the way so you can see a little bit better. This is what my pattern now looks like. All right, just like that. So what I'm going to do is to cut that apart, and when I cut this apart, I bet you've already guessed what we're going to do with it. We're going to add a seam allowance to it, because we have to put it back together. All right, so let's cut this apart. So this is the center front, and this is my side front. Now I made this woven. I made this pattern woven. So I also have to add a seam allowance to this for the woven, because this has no stretch to it whatsoever. So I need to add a 1/2 inch. So again, get your ruler, your marker, whatever you want to do. And you don't need any more than a 1/2 inch for this, because remember, we've added to the center front for those of you that need it. So I'll draw this on here. And then remember, whatever you add to the side, you must add to the side of the sleeve. So you're going to make a new sleeve for this pattern as well. And we'll cut on that line. Get my wonderful scissors. Again, this is the reason I like Kai scissors, because you don't have to pump them like that. You just have to guide them, which makes cutting a lot simpler. So I'll cut this out like this. And cut this like this. All right. Now, there's your center front, and there is your back. I mean your side front. I'm sorry. Your back of your pattern is used exactly like the back of the pattern. So now all we have to do is to add a seam allowance. Scotch tape a 1/2 inch seam allowance to both of these pieces like this. Let me pull it apart like this. Cut this out. And we are ready to cut out of fabric. All right, now we're going to cut this out of fabric. So let me show you how we've done this. I've done my pattern. I've scotch taped all my seam allowances on. I'm going to cut 2 sleeves. Now I want to show you a little trick. I made a sleeve pattern that says woven, because that's what we're making, is woven. You don't, and it's a long sleeve pattern. You don't need to make a short sleeve pattern. Just fold it up out of your way like that, and you can cut short sleeves. I do one other little thing. I put a notch on my pattern so that I know where the center of my sleeve is. So I've cut 2 sleeves, and then I've cut 1 whole back, just like this, and I put this on the fold because you can use your back right off your master pattern. You just need to add your seam allowances. So 1 whole back. Then I have 2 side fronts. So let me take this off of here and show you my 2 side fronts. There's my 2 side fronts. I'll move this one out of the way. And then I have cut 4 facings. Now you'll see why you're going to cut 4 facings in just a second. But let me tell you, 2 of those facings I have interfaced with the French fuse. That is totally up to you as to whether you want to do that. I like putting French fuse on there because it gives me some stability for your buttons and buttonholes. Again, totally up to you. So I have 2 that are uninterfaced and 2 that are interfaced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pattern out of your way, and I'm going to take one of the pieces that is not interfaced and lay it right side to right side. You're familiar with this, to the one that is interfaced. Okay, we're just going to work on one side at a time. Now I'm going to lay the one that's interfaced over here, and I'm going to lay the one that is not interfaced like that. So you can see they are opposite each other. Take your side front, the proper side front, and you want to pin that to the one that is not interfaced. All right, so let me show you where I'm going to pin this. I'm going to start pinning right up at the top. Now you have just a slight angle to this, so I want to show you a little trick. And I'm not quite sure why people find this so hard to do. I think they think by some magical wand or something, all this is going to fit in. You have to make it fit in. You cut it right, but you have to make it fit in. So I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'm going to pin down here. Now remember, I told you in the very beginning that if you wanted to use a glue stick, this is where you could glue this together if you wanted to. So I'm going to pin this all the way up, and I'm going to work in all of this area like this. Now I told you a while ago, this fabric has absolutely no give whatsoever. So in that case, you literally could, if you wanted to, clip it to make it working better. But you can see that I can pin all this in. Now, another little hint, you have a sewing machine in your room, so you can use your sewing machine as a third hand. Put this in, put the needle in, and then you can pull against it very, very easily. So you see that right here, when I start to sew, I'm going to have to stretch this slightly. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take that other side that was interfaced, and you're going to remember it's looks just like this. We're going to lay this right on top like this. So basically that side front is sandwiched between the two facings. So let me pin that in place, and then we're going to go to the machine and start our serger and start sewing. Here's a little hint about your sergers and your sewing machines. You can buy these paint brushes anywhere, and I like the ones with long handles, and that's a great way to get the lint out of your sewing machine and your serger because it's easy to use. So that's a nice little hint. You can buy those anywhere. So always, always, always test your fabric with your stitch length and your width and all that kind of stuff, just to make sure you're exactly where you want to be and you're happy with it. And what I always do is I just take a little piece of fabric like I got right here, and I stitch it, and then I pull it to make sure I don't see anything, and I'm fine with that. So I'm happy with my sample. Now I have pinned all of this together. Again, I have two facings. So let me open this up and show you. There's the two facings. One has been interfaced and one hasn't. And there's the side front. So by serging this with the side front sandwiched between the two, you wind up with your seam finished totally. And the reason you do this is if you're making a blouse and the blouse has a right and a wrong side, as you can see this fabric does, when I fold this back like this, can you see you're instantly faced? So all of your fabric stays exactly the same. The look is consistent. Now, I know that I told you this is a 1/2-inch seam allowance, and you can make sure that you guide this with a 1/2-inch seam allowance. I just simply cut it. I use the width of the seam allowance or the width of the stitching as is, but that's totally up to you. Again, it gives you just a little more scunch room, and remember, we're going to fit this garment in just a minute. So I want you to hold on to your pins and just serge, just like this. You know, one thing I found, a lot of people, for some reason, just let their fabric go under the serger. You need to hang on to it because you need to guide your fabric. You're the one that's operating it. So hang on to it front. You notice I'm holding it front and back? It's just a little bit easier, goes a lot smoother. See how beautiful this is? It looks really great. So there's the outside, and look, it's finished on the inside, because that piece was sandwiched between the two. Can't be any easier than that. So I have a right front and I have a left front. Now what I need to do is to sew the back to that. So take the back and put it right side to right side at the shoulder. And yes, you want to catch the whole thing in here because you'll be amazed how quickly this collar goes on. So I'm going to pin this together and sew the shoulder seams together with my serger. I'm serging the shoulder seams together. Cut the thread. Now, both shoulder seams are together and we're ready to do a collar. So let's press the seam allowance that we've created towards the front. So now I've sewn the shoulder seam together, and then I press the seam allowance towards the front. You could press it towards the back. That's totally up to you. You don't need, it really doesn't make any difference. Now you have two fronts here. So I need to hold them together. I don't want them moving out of my way. So guess what I'm going to do? Glue them. So all you have to do is to put your glue on the edge all the way down, and then finger press it together, and it'll stay together while you're working and stay out of your way. One little hint I want to give you about this glue stick. If you live in a humid climate, like I live in Kentucky and it's always humid, keep this in a plastic bag. It will never dry up on you. If you buy more than one or two, then I would actually keep it in a plastic bag in your refrigerator, and it'll never dry up on you. So that's just a really great hint with the glue. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my fronts together like this, and then we're going to measure for the collar. Now this is the time you're going to try this on. You want to put this over your shoulders and look where the neck is, because you're going to attach a collar, but you don't have a very big seam allowance. So if you're like I am, I have a pretty thick neck. I like my collars to fall a little bit lower. So I literally would take my scissors and cut out my neck edge. So I'm going to show you. Let me move this machine over just a little bit so that you all can see exactly what I'm doing. Let me put this over here. And don't be afraid to cut. Lightning's not going to strike you. It's fine. So I'm just going to lower my neckline just a little bit like this. And you need to do this before we put the collar on. So just a little bit. Again, I have a thick neck. I like it lower. That's my personal preference. Yours is totally up to you. But you do need to try it on so that you can see where it's falling on you. Now, one thing I want to tell you, in most patterns, most manufactured patterns, you cut out a front, you cut out a back, you cut out a sleeve, and you cut out a collar. And then you go to put the collar onto the garment and you pray that it's going to fit. I do mine a whole lot different. So what I'm going to do is I've sewn the shoulder seams together. I tried it on. I'm happy with where the collar is going to be. I'm going to take a tape measure and I'm going to stand this up in the hole just like this. And remember, when I stand this up, this is only 1/2 of the neck edge. So that measures 20 inches. I'm going to bring the collar all the way to the edge of this. If you want a notch in your collar, take 2 inches off that measurement. So again, let me go back on that. I stood the tape measure up and I measured this entire neck edge. Okay? Then I doubled it. That's 20 inches. And then I took 2 inches off of that measurement if you want a notch. So that's totally up to you. Again, all that is printed on your printed directions. I've cut out my 2 collars and I interfaced both collars and then I pinned them to the neck edge of the garment. Now the garment is sandwiched between those 2 collars. So that's what gives you a finished edge on both sides. Now, this is a cut edge. Don't worry about that because we're going around the whole edge with our decorative thread to finish the garment. So now I'm going to do is to serge this to the neck edge with a 1/2 inch seam and we're ready to go. I have the collar attached and you can see it's attached to the neck edge. So the garment is sandwiched between the 2 pieces for the collar. And then I have glued the 2 pieces together with the glue stick, just like I glued the front so it stays out of my way. Now, this would be a time that you would, again, try this on to make sure that collar is not too tall. Do you like the way it's laying over? Now is the time to trim it if you don't. I tried this on myself, and to me this collar is too wide, so I'm just going to fold this in half like this and trim right off the top. All right, very simple. Now, I won't do that on camera, but I'm going to cut that off. The next thing that you're going to do is to take your sleeves, and I have 2 of them, and I know where the center is. If you forgot to cut the notch, not a problem. Fold it in half and find the center. The center of this sleeve goes to your shoulder seam. Pin it in place, serge it on, press it, and we're ready to sew the side seams. I've sewn the sleeves in, as you can see, serged the sleeves in. And now what I'm going to do is to press that towards the sleeve edge. So press the seam allowance in towards the sleeve. And then I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to sew the side seams together, but I want to show you a trick. Now, those of you that pin a lot, and I know those people because they come to my class. And that's okay if you're familiar. I mean, if it makes you more comfortable pinning, that's fine. I use 1 pin when I sew the side seam. Just 1. Right there to hold that seam allowance together. I go to the bottom, and remember I told you a while ago, hold on to your fabric while you're sewing, and I'm going to sew this in 1 seam, start at the bottom, and go all the way through to the sleeve. I've sewn the side seams together, and I'm happy with the fit. So what you want to make sure that you do after you've sewn the side seams, try it on. Is that exactly how you want it? Do you want it tighter? If you do, take off another 1/2 inch all the way around. This is your garment. You get to decide how tight or how loose you want it to be. So I even had to take mine in another 1/2 inch just on the side seams. So I did that, serged off another 1/2 inch, and now I'm ready to go. So my blouse is basically done. My collar's attached, my facing's attached, and everything's done. All I need to do now is to finish the edges. Let me warn you, before you finish the edges, there is no hem in this. That is going to be serged. The raw edge all the way around is serged. So if you want the garment shorter, cut it shorter now. If you want the sleeves shorter, cut the sleeves shorter now. So now let me introduce you to my favorite thread. This thread is called Filleting thread, and it's much thicker than most threads. It's 100% acrylic, so it fills in beautifully and comes in lots of different colors. So I have 2 spools here, and this was how they used to come, and they don't anymore. Now they come in the bigger spools, which you get more for your money. So I had 2 spools, and I'm going to use up these 2 spools first. I want to show you how beautifully this machine works. This is the serger. This is a baby lock serger, and this thread, this Filleting thread, will blow through beautifully. So let's put this on the upper and the lower spindle like this. I'm going to take it through the tension. You need to make sure it's in the tension. And then I'm going to take my tweezers. Let me get my scissors here and cut off that end. Take your tweezers. Make sure that your machine is on threading. And I'll show you this little piece again because I think this is really cool. You can see right here that there's space. When I put the button down to threading, did you see those close up? That's what allows the air threading. So I'm going to take this piece like this, put it down into the loop that says L. That's the lower looper. Push the button. Now I want you to watch. Did you see the thread fly out? So the lower looper is threaded. So then I'm going to take the upper looper, and yes, you can do these at the same time. People always laugh at me because I do them one at a time. I do them one at a time because it fascinates me, it blows through. So I'm going to take the upper looper. Again, I'm going to cut off that edge. So have a nice clean edge. Take your tweezers, put it into the hole like this. Pull out some more thread. Did you see that blow out? So there is the one from the upper looper. Your machine is threaded. I have to tell you, when I had another kind of a serger before, and I used to pray as I would walk to my sewing room that the color that I wanted to sew on that day was on the machine, because I never wanted to change threads. And I know all those little tricks about tying on threads and pulling them through and all that kind of stuff, but again, you would pray as you would pull those through that they were going to come through. This way, you literally put the thread in the hole, punch the button, and it blows in. Now, this machine is smarter than I am, so if I tried to close it up, it wouldn't, because I have to go back to serging. And now the little door will close up. So very easy. Now, when we started this project, I told you always test your thread, always test your stitch length, always make sure you're happy before you start on your garment. So same thing. I have a sample here of my fabric. I am going to put my machine on the widest stitch width, and that's on this machine at 7.5. I have it on A, and I am going to, and I have it on 1, that's my stitch length, so it's low. And I want to show you how pretty this is. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous stitch width. Now, I want mine a little narrower, so all I have to do is to narrow the stitch width. And let's try it and see if you like it narrower. So this is how we are going to finish. Isn't that pretty? That's how we're going to finish the edge of our garment. Now, isn't that a beautiful edge? And the serger did all the work for you along with that beautiful thread. So all you need are buttons and buttonholes, and you're ready to go. Okay, so what do you think? You've seen this from the beginning to the end. Simple project. And all I need is buttons and buttonholes, and I'm ready to wear my blouse. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you've seen how simple and easy this system is to work with. All of the products you've seen in the video are available on my website or a link on my website. Please make sure while you're there to check out the classes to see where I am. Join me on Facebook under Fit Nice, and be sure to join the Fit Club. Thank you.